A lot of people thinking, should I make the big move? They're sitting on the fence. They're maybe thinking about immigrating, or maybe perhaps they're thinking about relocating and moving interstate. And it's a huge decision. It's a massive life decision. So I thought I would put together a pros and a cons list of living in Sydney, Australia. Hi, my name's Andy and welcome to my channel. Here I talk about Sydney property. I give tours of houses that I inspect during the week, and I provide free education to those looking to buy homes in 2023. If any of that interests you, smash the subscribe button so you don't miss any golden nuggets along the way. So I'm going to start, I know it's called pros and cons, but I'm going to start with the cons first because I don't like the negative things and I want to kind of get them out of the way. They are important and I wish I knew about them before I came here, but nobody likes being negative. So I want to talk about them briefly and then move on to the things that I like talking about, which are the positive. So first con is making friends. And I don't know if this is specifically a Sydney thing or this is just because I am now an adult and I work and it's harder to make friends as an adult. But my experience is only with Sydney, so I'm going to attribute this to Sydney. Also, maybe I'm the problem. But it does seem to be a common problem that I hear from an awful lot of my friends when they came here as well. I obviously am an immigrant, so a lot of my friends also immigrated to Australia. And it just seems to be that you end up hanging out with an awful lot of people that either come from the same country you came from or the same region, or also just expats now living in Australia. Obviously, a lot of Australians who already live here, they already have their friend group and we're creatures of habit. We like things when they're easy. So if I was an Australian and I live in here and I have my Australian friends, would I go out of my way to make more friends? I probably not. So as someone who's new in this country and is trying to put yourselves out there, trying to make new friends can be extremely difficult, especially with people who are from that country. I know as international students, when they have orientation week in their first week of their course, they don't have orientation with all the students in the course. They only have orientation with other international students. So apply that across the board with all immigrants in Australia. It just kind of makes more clicks. You see a lot of people walking around the city, hanging out with only the people that they came from in their country. You don't really see much mixing, which is a little sad to see, to be honest. Number two, one of the worst parts of Sydney by far is the nightlife. Sydney gets hammered about this by other places in Australia, made fun of how bad their nightlife is. And this stems down to an awful lot of unfortunate killings that happened in the Sydney city area. A number of years ago, they implemented some very strict laws called the lockout laws. No entry into nightclubs and bars after 10 a.m. Limit how drunk people could get. And obviously they worked because alcohol-related deaths within the city went down. But as a result, an awful lot of the nightclub scenes, the venues, the bars had to shut down because of lack of business. And this has kind of had just a culture effect within Sydney. As someone who comes from Ireland and Europe, where nightlife, in my opinion, is great, when you make the move to Sydney and then suddenly it's a Saturday night and it's 10 p.m. and the place is empty, it's a little crazy to think, what's going on? Where's everybody going? It's only 10 o'clock. But that's just how it is in Sydney, unfortunately. If you're not much of a party person, you don't really like going out drinking, you're more of a morning person, you don't really like being out late at night, no problem. Sydney's the perfect place for you then. Number three, road fines. So in Sydney, a lot of the roads have variable speed limits. And this is something that took me a while and some hefty fines and penalty points before it clicked with me. And you might be driving on a road that's 80 kilometers an hour and then suddenly it changes to 40 kilometers an hour because it's a residential zone or it's a school zone, and it changes at certain times in the day, and you have to be very vigilant about when these speed changes occur. Otherwise, you get caught by a camera or get pulled over by a policeman. And fines are pretty hefty, like they're in, the hundreds of dollars, even thousands of dollars, and they come with penalty points. And you get 13 penalty points, you lose your license. And it becomes very easy to top up 13 points. On public holidays, they have double demerits. So a 4-point offense on a long weekend is now an 8-point offense. So you could theoretically lose your license in one weekend. There is an argument to say you deserve to lose it if you're driving like a maniac, but as someone who is new to the city, it was a little bit of a shock to put up quite a substantial amount of points and fines within my first week because I didn't know that speed zones on roads changed. In Ireland, if a road is 80 kilometers an hour, it stays 80 kilometers an hour until you get onto a different road. Number four, This is just, again, my subjective experience. Number 4 is car park situation when you want to go to the shopping centre or go to your groceries. So in Ireland, if you want to go to your groceries, you drive down to our grocery store, and there's usually a car park beside the grocery store that's owned by the grocery store with a big land area that people can park in. That's not really how it's done in Sydney. Obviously, to limit how much land is used, I understand the reasoning, but sometimes it's very frustrating in Sydney when you just want to nip down to the shop and get something quick. You have to go into an underground car park and you have to drive around and find a parking spot and maybe go down to the bottom floor, and turns a 5-minute quick job into, half an hour, 40 minutes. So now let's move on to the pros, stuff that I love about Sydney and stuff that I love talking about. Number 1, obviously, is the weather. So the weather in Sydney can be absolutely spectacular. In my previous videos, I have talked about how it can actually be cold in the wintertime in Sydney, but by and large, and compared to other countries like Ireland, it is really, really warm and beautiful all the time. In fact, if you are someone like me who has fair skin and doesn't really do well for long periods of time in direct sunlight, it can get to that uncomfortable stage when it gets into hot summer days in the 30-40 degrees Celsius range. But for an awful lot of people, this is bliss. And I have to say, when you go to a beach on a hot day and getting into the water has to be the best feeling ever. Number 2 is the beaches. So Sydney has so many beaches. The entire coast of the city is just beach after beach after beach. Every single beach just as beautiful as the last. There are many coastal walks along the beaches where you can take them all in. When you go to the eastern suburbs, there's at least 6 to 7 beaches there. And the great thing is every beach is a little bit different and offers a little bit of variety depending on what you're looking for. So personally, I don't really like getting bashed by waves over and over again. I don't like going to the beaches where the waves are really big and that are really popular with people who like to bodyboard and people that like to surf. I like getting in the water when it's nice and calm and just chilling out and relaxing. There are beaches that offer this, and then there's other beaches, like I said, that have the massive waves and they're really popular with surfers and bodyboarders, people that just like getting bashed by waves. Number 3 is the standard of living. At the moment, the average wage, the weekly wage in Australia is just over $1,800, which comes out at about $95,000, $96,000 a year. And that's just the average. So the wages in Australia are very high, and it does make the standard of living, if you are smart with how you live. The best thing about Sydney is you can in fact live outside of very, very affluent areas because of the infrastructure, because of the transport and the motorways. You can in fact get from where you live to the areas that you want to be, say the beaches, in a very short period of time. That way you're living in an area that isn't breaking the bank rent-wise, while also enjoying the luxuries that the beautiful Sydney has to offer. The unemployment rate is also sitting at about 3.7%, which is historically low. It hasn't been that low in several years, possibly even decades, and it's never been easier to grab the opportunity that Australia's current skill shortage currently presents. And number 4, coffee. So if I was watching a video and somebody told me that pro of a city or a reason to move to that city is because of its coffee, I'd probably turn the video off. But hear me out. As someone who never really put that much emphasis on coffee, I just thought coffee all tasted the same. I used to just get one in the morning on my way to work in a petrol station and it was fine, done the job, didn't really care much about it. Since I've come to Australia, they have such a culture about their coffee. They love it and they put an awful lot of time and effort into making a good cup of coffee, to the point now where it's the best part of my day, waking up and having that first sip of coffee. It's like a hug to start your day, to the point now where it's entirely turned me into a coffee snob. And now when I go home and I drink that coffee that I used to drink from the petrol station, it just tastes like pure ditch water, and all I can think about is get back to Australia to have a good strong cup of Australian coffee. So there are some of the pros, in my opinion, of living in Sydney and some of the cons that come along with it. If you like that video and you would like to see more of these videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thanks for supporting the channel. My name is Andy. Thanks for watching.